Hello and welcome to the Creative Shoofly podcast. I'm Thomas Beutel. This podcast is about exploring the creative journey as an artist. And in this episode, I'm continuing my improvisational experiment that I call You and I Make a Thing. I invited my friend Michael to come up with a theme or project that we could do together. I hope you will enjoy hearing about our project as much as we did doing it. My guest today is Michael Tarnoff. Michael is a painter, a mixed media artist, as well as a photographer and all-around creative person. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you for having me, Thomas.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you. Michael, I'm curious, before we get started, I want to know if there's some creative project that you've been working on or you're planning to work on right now?
Well, with COVID, things changed for me artistically as far as access to my painting space and such.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been doing more photography and small works. And right now we're in the mountains in the Utah area, and I've been fascinated with ice and snow and cold and what happens with nature with that. So I've been thinking about in the back of my mind the series of photographs and just thinking about them as a series of what nature does in the cold, because I never really lived in the cold and witnessed it.
Right.
There's just fascinating things like when the fog comes in and then the cold comes in. If there's just the right amount of humidity, ice crystals form everywhere.
Yeah.
And it's magic. So I'm just kind of keeping my eyes open for that and just being witness to the magic that nature creates.
Well, that's great. That sounds like a real process of discovery.
It is. I love that you say that, because where I got most of my art learning from, not so much teaching, but learning, I'll call it, was at O'Hanlon Center for the Arts in Mill Valley. And the founder, Anne O'Hanlon, one of my favorite sayings of hers was, exploration comes first.
Right.
Discovery perhaps later.
Ah.
And it's so true when it comes to art and life.
Yeah.
So this really is a process of exploration and discovery the medium is nature and the cold and how it's so much different from the temperate Bay Area.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And I've been following you on Instagram, and your photographs have been just brilliant.
Thank you.
For my listeners, I'll put a link to Michael's Instagram in the show notes. Well, exploration, I think, is a good segue into what we're going to be doing today, which is You and I Make a Thing. And as you know, what my goal here is to come up with something that we can do together, either same thing that we do in parallel or something that we actually collaborate on. And Michael, so prior to our conversation today, I've asked you to come up with 3 things that you might be interested in doing. And I've done the same. And what I was thinking of is that we'd just bounce back and forth with our ideas, and then we'll see if we can coalesce on something that sounds like fun. How about that?
That sounds great.
Why did you start with something that's on your list?
Okay. Let me preface it with saying that when you asked me to think of these things, it actually was harder than I thought it was going to be.
Uh-huh.
And I couldn't, because I'm so spontaneous with my art. I actually never think about what I want to do ahead of time. I just sort of let the process flow with what in that moment.
Okay.
I mean, I might know ahead of time I'm going to draw just because of whatever's happening. But
right.
So this was very different for me. So the first thing I thought of, and these were all things, at least a couple of them were things that I've always thought about, but I have never done.
Uh-huh.
The first one was doing encaustic painting, which is painting with paint that is mixed with wax, and it sort of creates on like a panel, and it creates this dreamy kind of thing. And I've never done it before. I don't know how to do it, and I don't even know if it's practical. But it was the very first thing I thought of because I've always wanted to try it.
So I do follow a number of artists, and I've seen a number of encaustic paintings, and they are sort of dreamy. There's sort of lots of different colors flowing and mixing, and that's what you're talking about, right?
Right. I mean, you can do realistic stuff. I'm not a realistic painter, but one could do that with encaustic painting.
Yeah.
But it just sounds like so much fun. It would be quite an exploration and discovery process.
So I'm curious, is the wax hot or?
Yes.
it's hot wax. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. And then
I
you're
think
mixing maybe like oil paints or something.
yeah, I think or acrylic. I actually have no idea. I think you can do acrylic.
Uh-huh.
May have to wear a mask.
I would imagine, yes.
Yeah.
Sounds interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I love sort of dreamy and very colorful palettes and drawings, and they don't need to be realistic at all. I myself, I don't know how you, Michael, but I really respond to color a lot.
Yeah. I'm a
Yeah.
colorist. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's bookmark that one and let's see
Okay.
where this goes.
Sure.
So on my list, I've been fascinated with assemblage, like box
Uh-huh.
assemblage,
Yeah.
Joseph Cornell type.
Hmm.
And I've noticed that there are at least a couple artists out there that are doing, I guess, what they call small box assemblage. They'll take these little boxes that your iPhone comes in, or even smaller, like little jewelry boxes, and then using found art, they'll put an assemblage together.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
I've
Um,
I've dabbled in that a tiny bit, maybe one or two in my Saturday art class at the
uh-huh.
center over the 20 plus years that I was there.
Yeah.
And it was fun.
It's an interesting process to use found
Yes,
art as opposed to, I guess the best way to put it is like starting with an idea.
correct.
It's that exploration thing, really. It's like,
Yes,
okay, let's
yes.
see what happens there. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Oh, love it.
What's next on your list?
Okay, my next one is I've never worked with Sculpey clay.
Uh-huh.
Um, I've felt it and played with it, but I've actually never taken it, sculpted something out of it, baked it,
Right.
and then painted it. And
Oh.
as simple as that sounds, I've never done it, and I think it would really bring out my child
Yeah.
and my adult at the same time to kind of co-create something. Again, abstract, but I even looked into like, can you buy bulk kind of uncolored Sculpey, and you can.
Hmm.
So simple but kind of fun.
Yeah, I mean, I played with clay, but I've never fired anything before or hardened it before. So that sounds interesting. And then,
And that's
and not painted it after.
right. And that's the beauty of Sculpey is that you can, I guess maybe you might even be able to paint it beforehand. I don't know, but
Yeah,
you harden it in the oven,
right.
so it's you don't have to you don't need a kiln to do it.
Right, exactly. I like that. All right. Well, my next one is not very well defined. I just have the note that I have here is mail art collage. And the idea is to combine the idea of mail art and collaging together. So it might be just a collaged postcard or or something that we put in an envelope and then just send to each other.
Oh,
Maybe,
that's fun.
yeah, maybe as almost like a call and response type of thing.
Oh my goodness. Huh. You know, that I could envision doing it together where you start one
Uh-huh.
and 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 then you send it partially completed
Right.
and then you respond
Oh,
and back
yeah.
and forth.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Maybe like a little folded book where the pages are things that we fill in with collage, or
Oh,
like a zebra fold. No, no, something. What's the name where you fold it? Accordion, like an accordion fold. That's what I
right,
meant. Yeah.
right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't know. It sounds like a neat idea.
All right. What's the last one on your list?
All right. Hopefully, you know the artist Chuck Close.
I don't. No. Tell
So
me.
he did self portraits,
Uh-huh.
huge self portraits, and what he did was he narrowed down and magnified into little. He would make a little grid pattern.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe it would be a 9 foot by 6 foot self portrait, right?
Yeah.
But he would make grids that were maybe 1 inch by 1 inch or 2 inch by 2 inch.
Mm-hmm.
And he would zoom in on the photograph and see what the swirl pattern or color pattern might look like.
Right.
And he would paint that in each little box. And so he would abstractly build this grid with swirls and colors. And then when you step back, it became a portrait.
Wow.
Which was, I was always fascinated by it. And I thought that would be fun to do, like self-portraits of each other.
Yeah.
And they, obviously we're not going to do 9 by 7 feet. So maybe a 9 by 12 or something that can be mailed easily.
Right. Right.
But you can get a small grid on a 9 by 12 and just kind of, you just take a zoom in on a photograph and instead of drawing as though you're drawing a face, you just draw what's in that grid, the kind of the shapes and the colors as best you can. And then you move on to the next grid. And then you sort of end up with, it's not always going to be this pretty image, which is kind of fun. Not all of his were either. He celebrated the ones that were kind of goofy looking too.
Right.
So it's his last name Close, first name Chuck. I highly recommend you Google him and see if you
I
whether
will.
we do it this time or not, but that would be fun to try.
I've been playing with Procreate on the iPad, and I can totally see how you could, have the photo, then have another layer that is the grid, and then you just pinch open, and then have another layer where you then do the drawing in different brushes and different whatever.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
I would actually I would love to know how to do that too, because I don't know how to mix photo and drawing together in digital format.
Yeah. And actually, I mean, I'm just thinking about this. This is something that we could share easily over email, right? Or just file sharing or whatever.
Right.
To get going. Okay. Well, I'm chuckling a little bit because my last one is like somewhat related, and I don't even know what I was thinking here. I just wrote down the words wild selfies. And I guess the image that comes to mind is like, I live 20 minutes from the beach, so I'd probably go down on the beach and just do, wild poses or jump up in the air, or I don't know what it might be. So
that's fun too.
Yeah.
The other, I mean, we can each expand on that too, but I want to throw this into the mix just for you and the listeners. I've been on Instagram. There's some amazing artists on Instagram. I really just use Instagram for following artists. And there are a group, many photographers who do what's called intentional camera movement. And they purposely move their camera to create visual effects.
Oh, right.
And there are some that are, I mean, they're like gorgeous abstract paintings. They're so beautiful.
They're holding the shutter open. Is that what they're doing?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I generally only take photographs with my iPhone because even though I have very nice equipment, the phone just fits in my pocket, and I usually take photographs when I go hiking. So
the only way good, actually.
It's actually quite good. The only way I've been able to do it is at night when the iPhone has a longer exposure, and I can play with moving it. So you kind of, there would be some exploration into how do you get enough light but not too much light, but those would be some wild selfies for sure. That would be fun to try that.
Yeah. Well, I think we have 6 fantastic ideas, and I felt a lot of energy around all of them.
Yes.
So I'm curious now, which one did you feel a lot of energy around in particular? I have one that I did.
I think the one that I got the most energy around, as much because I think it combined a couple of what we talked about and the ease of sharing, was this idea of these sort of Chuck Close style or wild painted selfies using Procreate.
I agree.
And a grid and a photograph, and it just, we can share. There's constantly in progress sharing, and it's digital makes it very easy to do it. Since I'm we're 800 miles apart, so
I totally agree. That's the one that I just felt, wow, okay, that's something that I've never done before, and I can totally see, I can already visualize how I might be doing it, at least for me working on Procreate on the iPad. Do you have Procreate?
I don't, but I suppose I can get it. So yeah,
Yeah, it's not that expensive. I think it's
yeah.
just, if I remember right, I think it's just $9.95 or something like
Oh,
that.
okay.
We'll
Yeah.
have to
No, I can
check
definitely
something
get it.
like that. Wow. Michael, this went really quick, which I'm delighted about. And
Yeah.
I'm just excited about, like, all of these ideas were really good.
Yeah.
Um, I
No, they're
mean,
fun.
I definitely was sort of imagining something I might be making in Sculpey, and the encaustic painting sounds very interesting as well.
Yeah.
But I think we found something that is actually really exciting here.
I do
Um,
too. And as a tangent, you know, this could be expanded to many people
yeah.
where you take any photograph. It could be, and it could be a photograph of somebody that we don't even know,
Hmm.
and you divide it into nine. So you would need nine different people. You divide it into nine sections, and
Hmm.
then each person takes that, and they have to be exactly the same size.
Yeah.
And then each person takes that, and then we all agree on the size of the grid that we're going to use, and
Hmm.
then we each do 1/9 of it, and
Hmm.
all our focus is on our little piece,
Right.
and then you bring them all together and see how they form.
It's like a
That's a lot
quilt.
of fun too. Yes, that's a lot of fun too.
Well,
So,
Michael, thank you for this offer. I'm just
oh,
I'm
so
gonna
welcome.
go and look up Chuck Close now and
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
see what he's come up with.
Okay. Yeah.
All right, very good. We'll be in touch as far as the logistics and all that kind of stuff.
I'm looking forward to it, Thomas. Yeah.
In just a moment, I'll return with Michael to talk about how we did on our Chuck Close portrait adventure. Well, hello, Michael. How's it going?
Todd, I'm well, Thomas. How are you?
I'm doing great. I have to say, I had such a great time with this You and I Make a Thing and creating a self portrait on the iPad. It was a very interesting experience.
Yes, I could wax and wane about my experience with it, highs and lows.
Yeah.
I can go into more detail about, but it was fun.
Let me read to you a quote from Chuck Close. He was interviewed by Cleveland, Ohio's The Plain Dealer newspaper, and he made a choice in 1967 to make art hard for himself and force a personal artistic breakthrough by abandoning the paintbrush. He said, quote, "I threw away the tools. I chose to do things I had no facility with. The choice not to do something is in a funny way more positive than the choice to do something. If you impose a limit to not do something you've done before, it'll push you to where you've never gone before." End quote. When I read that, I thought, wow, that's exactly what we were doing here, isn't it?
Yes. That's great.
I'm always delighted when I read, the thought processes of artists that I follow and admire, and in this case, learned about, that sort of mirror some thinking that was going on in my mind, in this case, about going places that I've never gone before. So,
Yeah, this process that we took was, well, by nature, by design, it was new to each of us. And there were aspects that I love and aspects that I struggled with. It was very interesting, very different process from how I normally create.
we'll expand on that. How did you feel at the very beginning, after we had talked?
So the combination of excitement and also newness. I think I had purchased Procreate on
Mm-hmm.
another recommendation years ago.
Yeah.
I'd never done anything with it.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was a learning curve. And
Mm-hmm.
I just went to YouTube videos, and I think you may have set some videos as well. So I learned how to, have the background photo so that I could and then adjust things with that and choosing the grid size. And then it was a matter of the different pens and such. It was all very new to me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm sure, to get to where I am, I think I've learned maybe 1 or 2% of what you can do with Procreate.
Yeah.
And I started with sort of the elements that I felt most comfortable with.
Mm-hmm.
So my creative process is completely different from this. I never draw something that I think I want to draw, or the idea of what I'm going to draw is
Mm-hmm.
never there. It's never a specific thing. I draw more from stream of consciousness or in the present, or I must be channeling something. I actually don't know where it comes from.
Right.
And it just comes out of me. And I often make myself go into a very healthy struggle, if you will, so I can get myself out of it. Or
Mm.
my art goes through many iterations. It's always abstract. Sometimes it turns into a really cool abstract image that does look like something, but that's not the intent, or that's more of a
Mm-hmm.
fun ending.
Mm-hmm.
So mine is always, I'm never intending to do anything other than just be with the creative process of art and let it flow.
Yeah.
And that's my charge. I mean, it's just the greatest feeling in the world.
So this really felt different for you.
Completely different because I was
Yeah.
doing something. So it was, in the beginning, there was a push pull on how do I do it so that I have still a creative process that's flowing and actually draw something. And I just started to let go of what I was drawing and
Mm-hmm.
get into the meditative movement of following the lines and letting my hand move with the Apple Pencil
Mm-hmm.
on my iPad. And it was fun in segments where I would get lost were when there weren't any lines to follow. And
Mm-hmm.
so I was split to, well, do I make it up, or do I zoom in more, or do I make the background image darker so I can see it? It was just, it was a, there was a lot of mistakes. There was a huge chunk where I put it all in the wrong layer. I put a bunch of my drawing on the photograph layer
Yeah.
that was lost. So I had to draw it again, which was fun. Again, this was all a good learning process.
Right.
But I think I went through a doldrum with it for a couple of reasons, which was really fascinating. One was that except for my really large paintings, I don't spend a lot of time on one art piece. I
Mm-hmm.
usually, it could be a few hours to many hours,
Right.
but then I'll move on to the next art piece.
Right.
Even with some of my canvases, it can be like that. With my large canvases, like 4 feet by 7 feet,
Mm-hmm.
I will spend months, if not a year,
Mm.
working on them,
Mm-hmm.
once a week, twice a week. They just go through that many iterations, and it takes that long to do it, quite frankly. With this, it's just the size of an iPad, right? 100 by
Yeah.
100 grid.
Yeah.
I would get to a point where I realized my arc of creating it was done. So to have to recreate a new arc, it made me look at piece differently. It made me look at the process differently, and more, at first, more constricting and like, oh, why is this like this? And then after I got rid of that voice, or I let that voice speak, and then I said, okay, what's
Mm-hmm.
next? It was more, how do I'm creating something really cool here. I'm creating something representational that I'm not focused on that because I'm only focused on each little grid,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I'm going to pour my creativity into each grid. And when I zoom back out, we'll see what it looks like. And I'm not even done with mine, which is kind of exciting. So
I think it looks great as it is already. I mean, to me, it has almost like a quilt feel to it,
yes, you're right.
which I think is fabulous. I want to know more about what you mean by arc. I want you to elaborate on what you mean by arc. Does that mean like the arc of getting into a creative or an inspired moment? Is that what that means?
So for me, art in when I'm doing art, when I'm creating, it's undefined as far as time.
Mm-hmm.
And when I'm doing something that's not intentionally representational,
Mm-hmm.
that's just a free flow, I just follow the arc. So I'll just start drawing, and usually it builds on itself, sort of this beginning. You have to set the space, right? Sometimes
Mm-hmm.
it, with or without music, but you have to get into it. It's a process, actually. Sometimes it just comes immediately, and you're in the flow within the first few seconds.
Would you say that there's like an act one, act two, act three? Is that what you're getting at, or is it?
There is.
It sounds to me that there's like a beginning, middle, and end.
Yes.
And when you were at the end, You were a little bit, I don't want to say lost, but
I would say it was the middle.
oh, I see.
In the beginning, I got into the flow. I got excited about it. And then I
Yeah.
thought, when I spent as much time as I did figuring out the pens and working on this little bit, and I zoomed out and I thought, oh boy, I just spent an hour and I felt like I barely did anything. I thought, wow, this is going to take way longer than I thought it was, which is why I contacted you and said, we're going to need more time here,
Yeah.
which you graciously agreed to. And so I think my middle got, I don't know what the right word is. I don't know if it's interrupted, but the flow was changed.
Mm-hmm.
And at first I resisted it because I naturally flow when I
Oh,
create. I've never had an interruption before,
yeah.
but I still held the first act because it's always, that's the beauty of art, right? Your first act is always there,
Yeah. Yeah.
unless you pick up a new piece of paper. And so it was just a very long middle for me.
Hmm.
I'm coming to it almost feels like in this piece, I'm coming to the end of one arc and beginning another, or I've done that multiple times on this piece. It's actually forced me to do that from the way that I normally create to the way to create. So two things, both with the fact that we're doing something that's intentionally representational and in a grid, right? So
Mm.
we're limiting what we
Yeah.
do. And also I don't do that much creation digitally. Feeling the paper or the canvas,
Yeah.
feeling the pencil or the pen, that and feeling the friction
Mm-hmm.
as that moves across.
Really, that tactile feeling of
That
it.
tactile feeling is so important. I didn't realize how
Yeah.
important it was
Yeah.
until we got deeper into this. I've done shorter drawings on the iPad,
Mm-hmm.
and those were short arcs, an hour, maybe two at most. But when it gets longer, I'm missing that sound of the pencil. Right, I'm
Right.
going to draw right now. Just
Yeah.
that sound when you're hatching or when you're shading. I'm still drawing right now because it's fun. There's this element that I was missing, a connection to the piece of art that I am still learning how to let go of the friction that happens with
Mm-hmm.
in-person art. That's
Mm-hmm.
what the right word is,
Yeah.
versus the immediacy of when the pen touches the pad, it's creating something. And obviously the Apple Pencil, whether it's angled or whether you pressure, it does change things, but it's all very new.
Right. And then the fact that we were doing the grid, and we're essentially starting over with every grid.
Yes. Yes.
I I can see where that sort of lost feeling in the middle of it is like, oh, okay, I just did something and now I'm starting again, and almost like Groundhog Day in a way.
Yeah.
So, I experience a lot of the same thing in mine. I laughed when you said, "Oh, I starting to paint on the wrong layer." I can't tell you how many times I was started to paint the wrong layer. And in fact, I did finish mine a little bit earlier, and just recently I opened up the iPad again because I needed to save it and then send it to you. And I realized I was trying to move it around, and I realized that instead of moving it around, I was painting again. It's like, uh-oh, and frantically undoing. But there were a couple strokes that weren't in the undo stack anymore. And so I actually now have to go back and fix a few of the grids because I accidentally painted over them.
Oh, no.
And and so, or maybe I'll leave it there. I don't know. It kind
Yeah,
of
I
looks
think so.
it kind of looks goofy to me, but
No.
that's just how it is, right? When you
Hmm.
see something that other people maybe not see, or they see it
Right.
differently. But there was so learning the layers was an interesting process, and also it tripped me up quite a bit. It was nice that Procreate does have a grid feature that kind
Yes.
of made it easy.
That was great.
So for me, I felt it was also a little bit weird, like painting over a picture of me.
Yes.
And so it took me a while before that photo of me staring back at me sort of just faded into the background. It took me a while for
Yeah.
just to say, oh, okay, I'm just, I'm doing a process here.
Right.
You know,
Right.
the thing that never went away for me, though, were the eyes and the mouth. I mean, that's sort of where, our brains focus on eyes and mouth. And that's the part that I had to like go over several times. Like, okay, that mouth doesn't look right. I need to start again. So I ended up spending a lot of time on the eyes and the mouth specifically to try to find something that would translate into this, gridded picture.
Yeah.
I'm curious, did you have an aha moment at any point where it's like, oh,
Well, I had a few of them. The biggest one was, when you're drawing or painting on top of a photograph, it always looks fuller and more complete
mm-hmm,
until you turn off the photo layer.
right,
And then it's obviously it's clearer. It's white behind everything that you haven't drawn on.
yeah,
Plus all of your ink colors now look different.
yeah,
So I think my biggest aha moment was early on when I remembered to turn off the photo layer and I saw all these crazy lines. I was maybe 10% done. I
mm-hmm,
saw all these crazy lines and these weird colors. I'm thinking, where is this coming from? Like, and I could see that it was sort of my nose and part of my eye. I think I think I
mm-hmm,
started right in that part of my face.
mm-hmm.
But it was shocking to think like, oh, these colors don't look anything like my photo. I couldn't
Yeah,
figure, and I still can't figure out how you get the right color. That's a mystery still to me.
yeah,
But there was that moment, and I think that my hair, which is in the photo, is big and curly.
uh-huh,
That's been a kind of a wonderful struggle to get the way I want it to look, which I don't actually know what that is yet. It's more of a feel
mm-hmm,
to try to figure out how to make it look something like what I think I want it to look like without actually knowing what that is, right? I don't actually have the answer yet because I haven't seen it, but
yeah,
I've gone through my hair twice now and I'm still only about 50%. I don't even know if I'm 50% done because I still want to play with it.
right,
My hair actually has lots of different colors in it,
uh-huh,
shades. It almost looks like it's highlighted.
yeah,
So that's actually really hard. And so the kind of the aha moment is, and I've always felt this way, even when you see great paintings by Sargent or forgetting all the great painters at the moment in my head, but hair is always one of the most amazing things that
mm-hmm.
artists are able to do. And I've always been in awe of it. And doing it now, I can see why, because it's such a it's such a fine thing to zoom in on and try to do in blocks.
Well, I think you did a great job as far as what I'm seeing so far.
Thank you.
And to our listeners, you're welcome to go to the show notes and you'll see both of our portraits there. You've selected some washes for sort of the base color, and then you have some sort of fine line work that almost to me looks like, the terrain maps that have the elevations and all that kind of stuff.
Well, I
Uh,
am a civil engineer,
there you go.
so
Maybe
it
that's
comes
where it
out.
comes from.
I think it comes out naturally.
Yeah, I think it's great.
Uh,
So I had a few aha moments. One is that I made a layer specifically for swatches because there's a way in Procreate where you just tap down on a color and hold and it'll pick up that color. I picked that up from a YouTube. So that was sort of a nice little discovery for me was, oh yeah, create a swatch layer because otherwise those colors ain't coming back. If you're using, like I used a pen that was called bleach, and so it's not the full color, it's sort of a runny stain version of that color that I was using.
I want to hear your other aha moments, but I'm excited to go find that feature because I was looking for something where I could use like an eyedropper to grab a previous
Mm.
color, and I couldn't figure it out. The reason mine is a myriad of different colors is because I was trying to guess what color to use each time I picked the
Oh,
iPad.
right, right. The other one that I used is the color tool has something called harmony mode, where you can pick a pair of complementary colors or a triad of colors. And so I was using triads in mine. I was sort of filling my squares with like a base color and then covering it with a complementary color.
Yeah.
And then putting a dot in the middle to change the grayscale value, like the density.
Yeah.
So my thought was, okay, I'm going to create some complementary colors and then put the dots in to sort of change the value, the overall value when you pull back.
Interesting. I'm looking at yours right now.
Mm-hmm.
It's so great. It has elements of Andy Warhol.
Mm.
In it.
And for the hair, I just did short strokes. I didn't really spend so much time on it because,
That's brilliant.
I had to do my beard, and then I had to do my curly hair. What I decided there is I would do strokes, but the strokes would remain within the grid. So I wasn't taking the strokes beyond each grid. So each grid was sort of self-contained in terms of that, and I just tried to make sure that I was following the direction of the hair.
Yeah. Are your grids and your squares of colors, are those at a different layer from your hair?
No,
Okay.
but I should have. So I think that one of the things I learned here is that layers are good, and the more layers you do, the better.
Right.
And definitely when you leave it on a layer that you can, erase stuff on. Because I left it on my main layer, and then, like I said, I came back later and I was trying to move it around, and I was actually painting over. It's like, oh no.
Well,
Yeah.
and you kind of created a grid. Like you can, your grid is defined on your painting.
Right. And you mentioned how, like, when you took away the photograph layer, that it changed. And so I actually had to create a background layer that was sort of a neutral, like 50% gray. And I played with that a little bit, and I made it really dark and made it light, but I finally sort of settled on sort of in that middle 50% gray as a background, because otherwise, to me, the photo didn't look dense enough, or yeah, I guess that's the way to say it.
Well, and it's gray background on, well, and the listeners will have to look at the images, but from your shoulders up, there's one background, and then down below you've got white. There's lots of white that's in there that really helps break up. It
Mm-hmm.
creates tension and helps divide your painting really nicely.
Yeah, that wasn't intentional.
That wasn't intentional. Oh, it's
I was
fantastic.
thank you. I was just following the photograph. So I'd taken the photograph in my bathroom, and there's a yellow wall behind me, and so that's why it shows that color. And then the shirt, was a sort of a darker gray shirt.
Will the photographs be on the notes as well, so they can see what it looks like, or just the images?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
great.
Well,
Good.
yeah.
How did you choose the colors for your face and your hair? You went in a more abstract and fun direction.
Yeah, sort of an orange-ish color. I was contemplating to do like a bluish or greenish, but I thought, well, that might look a little bit too ghoulish, so I went with a warm color. I had to play with the colors a little bit, definitely.
Well, yours is definitely playful.
Yeah, thank you. It was also a playful pose. That was kind of fun to do the pose. So, Michael, what would you say or recommend to someone who was going to try this or something similar to this?
I would say, well, okay. I was going to say learn the tools and et cetera, but one of the things that I learned from where I kind of learned how to create and see and perceive, O'Hanlon Center for the Arts in Mill Valley, was that it's all about seeing and perceiving and kind of developing that muscle
Mm-hmm.
and letting go of what we've learned in school or media, whatever, that art is this one thing and it's perfect and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
I would throw all that out the window or set it aside, depending on your feelings on it, and let mistakes happen and let them be a part of your piece. Cause you're creating a part of you. You're
Yeah.
creating a journal
Mm-hmm.
entry. And so you can, I used to know an artist who, if she didn't like something, she would stick it under the sink and then turn on the water and let the stuff wash off until she's kind of saw a cool part of it that she wanted to keep. And then she would pull it away and dab it dry and then continue.
Yeah.
The erase tool can look like that, but I think that I've spent most of my now 24 years drawing
Mm-hmm.
and creating hardly ever using an eraser and
Mm-hmm.
just building on and incorporating mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
And if you really like something, don't let it rule painting or what you're creating.
Yeah.
And, kind of have fun with this and let it, choose your grid size carefully because it makes a big difference in how long it's going to take.
Yeah, sure does.
But I'm fascinated by what I would, not in my lifetime would I ever create something like this unless I had agreed to do it with you,
Yeah.
because I would have lost interest and I would like, this isn't for me. But because you asked me and I agreed and we, made this challenge for ourselves, I stuck to it. So, make it so that you know how much time it's going to take, and then give yourself the time to do it because it's a really fun process.
And what embedded in what you just said there is make it a collaboration.
Yes.
There's something about creating art in collaboration that really is a little bit different than when you're just sitting by yourself in your studio. I mean, we did this by ourselves, but we were still doing it in collaboration, and it makes all the difference in the world.
I 100% agree.
Yeah. And I also wanted to say that there is really something personal about doing a self-portrait,
Yes.
It's different. It really feels different. It's like,
Yes.
That's me. It's
Is that
it's
what
a
I look
version
like?
of me. Yeah. Well, Michael, thank you so much for this. This was a real delight, and I'm glad we went through this. I'm looking forward to seeing how yours evolves. Let me know as it evolves, and
Absolutely.
at some point, if you say, "Okay, I'm done with it," then let me know as well. Love to see it.
Sure.
But this was really a fun project, and thank you for sort of guiding us in this direction of Chuck Close. I'm so delighted to have learned about the artist and what he did. So thank you very much.
Thank you for inviting me, Thomas. It's been a delight.
That's all for today's episode of the Creative Shoofly podcast. I hope you've enjoyed our conversation. The goal of You and I Make a Thing is to step outside our comfort zone and embrace the uncertainty of trying something new. I hope we've inspired you to take a leap into the unknown. Thank you for tuning in, and I look forward to sharing more insights and experiences with you in my next episode. Keep creating and never stop exploring.